Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Patrick Mackenzie, and I'm the CEO of the Immigrant Employment Council of British Columbia. Now, we're in an interesting age where so many countries are closing off their borders to immigration, and yet Canada has bucked that trend, and we're actually we're doubling down and accepting higher levels of newcomers than we ever have. And this is a very strong signal for the importance of immigration to the economy. Employers throughout Canada are crying for talent across all sectors and all skill levels. And yet often those same employers are overlooking the immigrant talent pool that's there in front of them. And so this is where the Immigrant Employment Council of BC comes into play. We like to put employers at the center of the conversation around immigrant labour market integration, because after all, they're the gatekeepers who can hire or not when it comes to labour market entry. And so we're focused on bringing about systemic change to workplaces so that employers understand how to recruit, hire, and retain immigrant talent. We and our partners from coast to coast, there are 10 immigrant employment councils between here and Nova Scotia, and another 50 service delivery partners that we work with that bring our innovative programs to employers and newcomers alike. We work together to provide these unique solutions to get immigrants into the workforce in meaningful jobs. And so I'm especially excited to be here today to hear more about Canada's efforts to strengthen the immigration system and bolster our place in the world as a destination of choice for those skilled immigrants that we need so desperately from coast to coast, and to help our businesses and our economy grow. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, the Honourable Sean Fraser.
Hello and good morning, everyone. Feels like the afternoon to me. I got here from Nova Scotia yesterday, so still dealing with the time change. But thank you so much for to our host for the generous introduction, and to the work that IEC BC does every day to help unlock the power of immigration for local employers. Je suis ici aujourd'hui pour vous parler des défis auxquels le système du Canada est confronté, mais également des occasions qui s'offrent à nous pour bâtir un système d'immigration plus fort et plus efficace, réduire notre arrière et remédier à notre pénurie de main-d'œuvre. Before I get too far, let me just reiterate that our perspective as a government that immigration is a good thing for Canada. From an economic point of view, it has become essential. Nearly 100% of Canada's labour force growth in recent years has come from immigration. The reality is that I'll give the float plane a minute to buzz by here, make sure we don't interfere with the audio. Oh geez, it's fun to watch. Look, from an economic point of view, I think it's important to place ourselves in the appropriate context. The Canadian economy is running extremely hot right now. Over the course of the pandemic, there was a lot of fear about what would come when we started to see the economy reopen. We've now seen approximately 115% of the jobs that were lost during the pandemic have been recovered. We've seen GDP now exceed pre-pandemic levels, and importantly, our rate of unemployment is at its lowest point in history since we started keeping track of that statistic in Canada in 1976. Despite these successes, there's almost 900,000 jobs available in the Canadian economy. And knowing that our labour force growth has disproportionately come from immigration in recent years, we have no choice but to embrace immigration as a growth strategy if we want to make the most of the economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, it's not just an economic challenge, but immigration is going to help us deal with one of the most troubling demographic trends that I'm watching very closely, which is our aging population in Canada. For those who aren't aware, if you go back 50 years or so, there were 7 workers for every retiree in Canada. Today there's about 3. By the time I'm ready to retire, that number is going to be closer to 2. If we don't embrace immigration to continue to bring young working age families into the country, our conversation 20 or 30 years from now may not be about labour shortages, but will be whether we can afford things like schools and roads and hospitals. We need to continue to embrace immigration if we're going to grow our economy and protect against this troubling demographic trend. But immigration is really about people. It's about bringing workers into jobs. It's about being reunited with families, having people come to visit or to study in Canada. And it's important that we don't lose sight of this. But I find that Canadians are already there when it comes to this narrative. There is widespread support for increasing immigration across Canada. I think that's due in part to the fact that we're a nation of immigrants. Immigration is not something that we do, it's who we are. It's who we've been since Confederation. You know, it's my family came here 250 years ago, but those who became citizens during a ceremony at the Come From Away production last night are now every bit as Canadian as I'm ever going to be. En fait, à l'exception des peuples autochtones qui vivent sur ces terres depuis des temps immémoriaux, tous les Canadiens ont une histoire enracinée dans l'immigration. Que l'on appartienne à une famille qui vit dans ce pays depuis de nombreuses générations, comme le mien, que l'on soit le premier membre de sa famille à avoir élu domicile au Canada, nous sommes tous des Canadiens. You know, with the exception of Indigenous peoples, every family's history in Canada had its origin story written by a migrant. This informs who we are as a country still today. You know, it's unique when I think about Canada's position when it comes to immigration globally, because when I speak with my counterparts internationally, I'm the only immigration minister in a developed economy globally whose biggest problem with immigration is that we can't get people here quickly enough to satisfy the demand of communities. And though that's a real challenge, I'd far rather have that challenge than deal with some of the challenging political narratives about whether people should be accepting towards newcomers. And I'm very grateful to be the Minister of Immigration for Canada. Despite the fact that we continue to embrace immigration and people support it, it's no secret that the immigration system is facing very real challenges. The good news from my perspective is most of these challenges come from sources that are external to the Government of Canada and are temporary in nature, which means we can overcome them. I think back to the pressure that COVID-19 has placed on our immigration system, really in two different ways. One, due to public health measures all over the world, our productive capacity was reduced when people couldn't show up at work due to local public health measures. And many of our employees work in jurisdictions where working from home was not possible due to security concerns or due to lack of connectivity, depending on where their home may be located. But we also made a decision when the borders were closed to resettle people as permanent residents to grow our population who were already here temporarily. We couldn't have the borders open due to public health reasons, but we continued to accept applications for people who had an interest in coming to Canada. This created a scenario where there was a significant number of applications in the system for people who weren't ready to be processed because the borders were closed. In addition to this challenge associated with the pandemic, we've been required from a moral perspective to respond to the twin humanitarian crises in Afghanistan and in Ukraine. And though I have no regrets about Canada playing a leadership role with one of the most substantive contributions globally on some of these efforts, it does have an impact on your processing capacity when you choose to respond to events that happen in real time. Of course, we've also been dealing with a significantly increased demand across our system because a few years ago, Canada actually became the world's top destination of choice for people who were thinking about leaving their home country to seek economic opportunity. Alors que nous traversions la pandémie, le nombre de demandes de visa de visiteurs, des permis d'études et de travail, des résidences permanentes et de citoyenneté a considérablement augmenté. Nous sommes confrontés à plusieurs défis en même temps pour soutenir notre économie, faciliter le regroupement familial et respecter nos engagements humanitaires à l'égard des personnes qui fuient la guerre et l'oppression. You know, this is also compounded by the fact that we're in the midst of completely rebuilding a digital immigration system in Canada. And it's going to take us a couple of years to fully deploy the new features that will solve a lot of these challenges, but we need to continue to make progress in the interim. So I've got some good news to share, because as a result of certain investments and policy decisions, we're starting to make some really serious progress in terms of the productive capacity of our department to overcome the challenges that these large volumes of cases have presented. When I look at temporary programs, people who are coming to Canada to work temporarily or to study or to visit, we have seen a record-setting year so far in terms of the number of applications that we're processing. We've now processed approximately 3.73 million applications by the end of July. Compared to last year, we were dealing with just shy of 3 million at 2.97. This is a major increase in our productive capacity that is bringing more people here. On the permanent resident side, things are really moving along in the way that we would hope they would. We're well on pace to break the record for the largest number of newcomers who will be resettled in Canada. By the end of July, there have been more than 275,000 newcomers resettled as permanent residents in Canada. This puts us well on track to exceed our goal of 431,000 permanent residents over the course of this year. What's really important, though, is not the statistics. It's the human experience for people who are going through the system. And I'm very pleased to share that for those who are coming to work through the Federal Express entry streams, we have now achieved our 6-month processing standard for those who are coming through Federal Express entry system to come work in Canada. For those who are coming to be reunited with family members, we have now achieved the 12-month pre-pandemic service standard for new applications going forward. Now, there are still people who are in the system who've been waiting longer than that, but I don't want people to think that we're suddenly pulling others in front of them in the queue. We're going to be able to make serious progress to work through that backlog of cases to make sure that we can offer that service standard going forward. Look, despite a major increase in productivity, immigration backlogs are a very real challenge. What we're seeing right now is a record number of cases come in for applications and record productivity, but still the demand is exceeding our processing capacity for the time being. But we're starting to make serious progress on this as well. Now, there's a very big difference that I should point out between the total number of applications in the system and those that are actually in backlogs. I know that some of our folks who work on the other side of the House of Commons are quick to point out the total number of applications that are in the immigration system and label them backlogs. But to me, somebody who applied yesterday to come to Canada can't properly be considered a backlog. But that said, as of today, 54% of the applications in the system are beyond the service standard. We can do better than that, and we have the capacity to fix that. And I'm very pleased to share that one of the first steps we're employing to help overcome this challenge is that IRCC is in the midst of a hiring spree, and by the end of this fall, I'm pleased to announce, we're going to have hired more than 1,250 new staff to the department to help boost processing capacity and clear some of these backlogs. In addition, I don't think it's enough for me to stand up here and make an announcement about a significant number of new hires without committing to transparency about what those people are going to be doing going forward. So I'm very pleased to share as well that we're going to start providing monthly updates in real time for people who have the ability to look at the number of cases in our system, the number that have been completed, and the number that have exceeded the service standard. I think it's extremely important when we're communicating to the world that we do want people to come, and we do want people to come, that they have a sense of how long it's going to take to get here. By holding ourselves accountable, by publishing this information with monthly updates online, the Canadian public as well will be able to watch whether the investments we're making are having the intended impact. You'll be able to find this data on our website very shortly, and every month there will be an update to provide you with a real sense of where we're at when it comes to immigration. Look, just to conclude, I want to share that in the weeks and months ahead, there's going to be a series of new measures that we're going to be releasing that's going to help bring workers here more quickly, make it simpler for families to be reunited with their loved ones in Canada, and to hold ourselves accountable by being transparent and sharing with the public precisely where we are. But if I can leave a parting message with the families who are trying to come to Canada to be with their loved ones, to the businesses who are trying to hire workers, to the workers who are trying to come and make a contribution, Canada wants you. Immigration is a major pillar of our economic growth strategy as we seek to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and continue to grow our population for the long term. We're going to continue to implement the measures that make it quicker to come to Canada, whether it's for economic purposes, family reunification, and we won't stop playing a leadership role when it comes to responding to the humanitarian crises of our time. With that, I want to say thank you to everyone who's come out. Very pleased to be here to share this positive news about our new hires we'll be bringing on to help reduce the backlogs at IRCC. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. My name is Peter Liang. Bonjour, good morning. I'm here to moderate the Q&A session. Ça me fait plaisir de modérer cette séance de questions et réponses. Si vous avez des questions, vous serez les bienvenus pour les poser dans la langue officielle de votre choix. When you ask a question, please state your name, the organization you work for, clearly. J'aimerais également souhaiter la bienvenue à ceux et celles qui se sont joints à nous par téléphone aujourd'hui. Welcome to those who have joined us today by phone. Comme l'annonce a lieu en plein air, on s'excuse sincèrement des bruits because this event is taking place outdoors. We do apologize for the noise. So please, when you ask a question, please do so slowly and speak loudly. Thank you. So let's see if we have questions on the floor. Okay, so sir, please, my colleague is going to pass you the phone.
Thank you. Good morning, Minister. My name is Hector from Omni and City News. If regularization of undocumented work... Hold on, sorry.
Yeah, Hector, let's give a minute for the helicopter. There, go ahead.
If regularization of undocumented worker is included in your mandate, what will be the process these workers have to go through in order to get permanent status?
Look, thank you very much for the question, and I'll let you know that there's policy work that's still going underway before we have identified the right process to satisfy my mandate letter commitment. But what we've seen when it comes to the regularization of undocumented workers is through the pandemic, we actually adopted new strategies to make it easier for those to come to Canada who may not have had status. I'm thinking about programs like the Guardian Angels program, where people who are making a positive contribution to our communities, in many instances taking care of our loved ones on the front lines of COVID-19 and long-term care, are having a tremendous positive impact. We've created a stream during the pandemic that was temporary to allow those people to qualify for permanent residency. Similarly, we established a new program, a pilot program, in partnership with the Canadian Labour Congress to provide undocumented construction workers with a pathway to permanent residency. So they'd be able to be working above board in a way that they don't need to be hiding from the Canadian public. What we're doing right now is understanding the lessons from those kinds of programs to figure out what worked and what can be improved upon. I do have a mandate letter commitment that requires me to look into establishing a pathway for people who do not currently have status to achieve regularization. We will have more to report once we finish the policy work on this particular mandate letter commitment, and I'll very much look forward to providing a pathway to the extent we land on the right policy for undocumented workers. My view is that when we have individuals who are making a positive contribution to our communities, it's not right for them to be here for 5, 10 years with their families, not knowing if they'll be deported someday. Giving people certainty that they're going to be able to continue to live and work in Canada is something we're working towards, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse, because we do have to land on the correct policy parameters before we have details to share about what the process may look like.
Can we expect it to be lengthy?
Sorry, can we go to the next question? Maybe if you have a follow-up, you can ask later. So we have a question on the line. Please go ahead. Allez-y.
Thank you, merci.
Allez-y.
Please press star 1 if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. And we will take the first question. Nous allons prendre la première question de Boris Proux, Le Devoir.
Bonjour, hi Minister. I'll ask my question in English if you don't mind. I have a question regarding the temporary stay in Canada, like the visit passport. If a person submitted a request of visitor visa before the 21st of September 2021, and his situation didn't change at all, I mean, the visitor still imperatively needs to travel to Canada this summer. Does this applicant need to submit a new request, or do you recommend for him to wait the backlog to be treated or cleared? So what would be your advice in between those two choices?
Look, thank you. I'll lay out for you the situation you've described, and people can make their own decision as to what they ought to do. What we've seen before discretionary travel reopened in Canada as of September 7th, 2021, we had an enormous number of applications. There's currently about 170,000 in the system for people who've applied to come to Canada. A significant number of those have applied to come for an event that never took place, a wedding that was canceled due to public health measures, a concert that never happened because they couldn't have the public gathering in large numbers. There are some people who have a reason for travel that may still be applicable, but an enormous number of that 170,000, a vast majority, no longer have the same purpose of travel. What we've done is prioritized files that have come after, applications that have come in after that date, to make sure that we're focusing our efforts on people who have plans to come to Canada, because it's a good thing for the Canadian economy and for Canadian communities when people do come to visit. So if someone has applied before that key date and they want it to reapply, they would benefit from somewhat of an enhanced priority for people who were still planning to come to Canada. Of course, those who wanted to come for an event that's no longer taking place need not reapply if they don't intend to come. But we have suggested to many people through our office, if they do want to reapply, they would expect to benefit from a relatively higher priority processing than people who have made an application prior to September 7th, 2021, who are caught up in that massive cases of about 170,000 applications, most of whom no longer have the same purpose of travel when they submitted their application.
Well, that's odd that you can't say that you don't recommend them to reapply, because you seem to mention that they'll have a priority way in order to have their visa. But I'll go ahead with another follow-up. For instance, right now I'm looking at the delays for Haiti, for instance, the country. Right now, the delays have been going worse by the day.
Sorry, there's noise on site here, and we can't hear your question. If you want to wait just 20 seconds or so, there's a plane taking off beside us.
Definitely.
Okay, I think you're probably good to go again.
Well, we reported that for some countries it takes up to 5 months in order to get a visitor's visa, and it's getting worse by the day since we reported on that last month. For instance, in Haiti, it went up from 81 days to 98 days right now per your website. I'm just wondering if this delay will get any longer now, or do you commit to put this number down anytime soon?
So thank you. We'll be sharing the real data about this on our website very shortly as a result of the transparency measures that I've announced earlier today. We are very close to what we expect to be the peak. In addition to the record demand of cases that have come through, we're dealing with ordinary cyclical increases that are related to things like study permits with the academic year coming in, and visitors visas that have come in over the course of the summer for people who want to come as tourists to Canada. We expect that we're near the peak. It's possible there could be a slight increase in the next month or so. But from that point going forward, we're projecting that we're going to see a meaningful reduction in the time that people should expect processing of a visitor's visa to take place. In fact, this is true not just of visitors visas. We expect to see meaningful reductions across the different streams through which people can come to Canada. If you're coming here as an international student, or you're coming here as a worker, or you're coming here as a tourist, we're going to have a dramatically improved situation by the end of this year. We're hoping to be back to a service standard for work permits and study permits by the end of this year. Tourist visas will probably lag behind shortly into early 2023 on our current projections, but we do expect very shortly we're going to see a reduction in the average wait time for people to come to Canada under each of these temporary streams.
So I will take a question from the floor now. Thank you, Christine. Oh, sorry.
Hello, Clay from Global. There's a significant shortage of childcare workers in Canada. In one small community, there are 6 nurses who can't work full-time because the local daycares don't have enough staff to take more kids. The daycares say the federal immigration backlogs are a big part of the problem. What are you doing to address this so healthcare workers can go back to work and communities are left waiting, sort of?
Look, thank you very much. I think you've walked right into why immigration is important. To get people here, we're going to make a positive difference for our communities. So there's no silver bullet when it comes to reducing the wait times. We have to have an all-hands-on-deck approach and leverage every policy, every investment, and every piece of technology that we can. When we're looking at resources, let's not pretend that this is the first time we've done something to help speed up the process. In the economic and fiscal update last year, there was $85 million designed to get people here more quickly who are coming for as visitors, coming here on a work permit, coming here on a study permit, and to speed up processing for PR cards and citizenship. And we've seen that those investments are actually starting to take hold with some of the numbers that I shared today. We've also had an increased investment for client service in the last federal budget with $385 million in addition to the economic and fiscal update that are being deployed presently to help deal with this sort of thing. But there's a really important piece here. When we look at the different policies that we can do, certainly there's things we can do from leveraging technology, using advanced analytics to speed it up. But when you're seeking to bring people here permanently, the main answer is the immigration levels plan. We need to continue to grow our immigration levels plan so more workers can get here. A large part of the reason that people are waiting a long time to come to Canada is that there is such huge demand. And by creating more space for people to come to Canada, people will actually be able to get here more quickly. In addition, I'm very excited about a recent policy change that we made in the recent Budget Implementation Act, Bill C-19, that is going to provide more flexibility through the federal express entry system. What this is going to allow us to do is to have targeted draws on the sectors that are most in demand in the Canadian economy, in the communities where they are in greatest demand. So if in my home province it's nurses and childcare workers, and I can assure you both of them need more workers as quickly as possible, we'll actually be able to do a draw that targets those professions in Nova Scotia. If in BC it's perhaps caregivers or construction workers or tech professionals, we'll be able to do a targeted draw during the express entry system that meets local labor demands in the communities where they're most needed. Now, I'm not suggesting that these are necessarily the professions in the regions that we will conduct draws on. We need to go through a process of consultation with those who know the local labor market best. But by continuing to increase our spacage, leveraging this new flexibility, and using regional programs, including the provincial nominee program, to get people where they're needed, we're going to be able to have a meaningful impact to get more workers to fill some of those hundreds of thousands of jobs that are available, including in both childcare and healthcare.
Mr. Fraser, so we'll take a question from on the line.
Thank you, merci. La question suivante, the next question is from Patrick Mackenzie. Please go ahead. From Parliament Today. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister Fraser. Thanks for taking our questions. I just had a bit of a broad question for you. We had Mr. Singh up today about speaking about how the immigration system can help tackle labor crunches in the healthcare system, and I know that's something that you just referenced. He said that moving on an accelerated pathway for healthcare workers is, quote, a simple fix Ottawa should consider, and federal officials also need to be moving on speeding up recognition of foreign credentials. I would like to get your thoughts on if this is fair, what, if anything, you can do to help this, given some of it may lie outside of your jurisdiction or control.
Look, at risk of being too direct, my first reaction is welcome to the conversation. We started prioritizing healthcare workers a couple of years ago, back during the pandemic, to get people here more quickly. So healthcare workers are benefiting from priority processing, but to suggest that it's a simple fix when it's actually been in place for a significant period of time is too simplistic, I would suggest, in terms of the solution that's required. Certainly it's an element of the solution, but it's not the only one. Mr. Singh's correct, though, to point to foreign credential recognition as something that we need to tackle in collaboration with provincial and territorial governments. The challenge for us federally is that we don't necessarily have the legislative stick when it comes to healthcare workers that provinces do, but that doesn't mean we don't have a carrot to use as an incentive. When it comes to the legislative capacity, the reason that that's in the provincial purview is that healthcare is a provincial responsibility. And to defend my provincial counterparts to some extent, they've typically shipped off the ability to make rules and regulations about who can practice a given profession to professional regulatory bodies. So a College of Physicians or College of Nurses, for example, who sets a criteria to practice. There is some good movement with different provincial governments who are trying to make more flexible and more timely the process of becoming credentialed to practice your chosen profession in Canada. But I don't just want to throw my hands up and say this is a problem for another level of government, because there is something we can do. In the recent federal budget, we've allocated $115 million over the next 5 years to support programs that are helping healthcare workers actually achieve their credentials in Canada. there's some incredible work that's been going on with nonprofit organizations and with educational institutions across Canada that are actually benefiting from these kinds of investments today that we're going to continue to double down on with this additional $115 million to make the process easier. This was a big focus of a conversation that I had recently with my provincial counterparts at the Forum for Ministers Responsible for Immigration, which was held in New Brunswick earlier this summer, and it's something that we're going to continue to move on step by step and shoulder to shoulder with our provincial counterparts to make sure that when they are prepared to use the legislative abilities that they have, that we'll be there to make sure that we deliver financial support for institutions who provide training. In addition, the flexibilities I mentioned that we achieved through Bill C-19, which passed the House of Commons in June, is going to allow us to do targeted draws. There is not a region in Canada that doesn't have a shortage of healthcare workers. By continuing to focus on this new flexibility to do targeted draws for people who have the critical skills that are necessary to improve the quality of healthcare in Canada, I'm completely willing to do that, so long as our partners on the ground in different parts of Canada agree that that's the correct path forward. And every indication I've received from them to date has been that's precisely where they want to go.
Sorry, Mr. Fraser. So we'll take a question again from the floor. If there's Hector, do you want to ask you a follow-up question? Sorry about that earlier.
Thank you. So Minister, again, regarding the undocumented worker, regarding their permanent status, will those facing deportation days from now make the cut?
So I don't want to project on any individual cases. The rules today require that a person to be present in Canada has legally binding status in Canada. There are certain ways a person can apply on humanitarian and compassionate grounds to remain in Canada, despite the fact that they may have run out of a legal status. We'll have more to report when we actually put forward a policy to address undocumented workers, but as it stands today, the rules around removals from Canada, which are conducted by CBSA, remain in place and are likely to be enforced, but that should be taken with the caveat that there are certain circumstances where a person can apply on humanitarian and compassionate grounds to remain in Canada, despite the fact that their legal status may have run out. Thank you, Hector.
Thank you so much. Another question from the floor? Okay, from Ref M. Yes.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you for taking my question. When you talk about reuniting families, especially about the super visa, the insurance fee is taken as lump sum amount, which is difficult for many people, especially during inflation. Will there be any changes or improvement to these kind of financial obligation in the future?
So we made some really big changes to the super visa program to help. I'll give you a minute for the plane to buzz by here. First, for those who aren't aware of the program, I think it's important to understand where the super visa program fits within the Canadian immigration system, and then understand certain changes we've recently made that I expect are going to help with the precise issue that you've mentioned. So one of the greatest challenges I have as the Minister of Immigration is navigating the intense demand through the Parents and Grandparents program, which allows a person to have certain family members come and remain in Canada. Just to put this into perspective, we've made a decision to increase the number of spaces available in our immigration levels plans through Parents and Grandparents stream from about 23,500 to 32,000 over the next couple of years. That said, when we conduct a new intake, it's common for us to receive somewhere in the vicinity of 200,000 new applications just through the Parents and Grandparents stream. This makes it impracticable for someone who may not be chosen through the random selection process to be able to count on the fact that they're going to be able to get here in a timely way. That's why the Super Visa program was created. It allowed people to come here for a period of time, initially just a few years, extendable up to 5 years, but it came with burdensome requirements around medical insurance that you had to pay for and have in place before you could come. We made a couple really meaningful changes to the Super Visa program just a few months ago. The first extends the period of time significantly that a person can remain in Canada, and you can extend that for up to 10 years now. This is a meaningful thing. While somebody is waiting to perhaps go through the parents and grandparents stream, they're actually able to be in Canada on a super visa status that allows them to be with their family, which is the most important thing. But the other big change is that we're working right now to establish a list of insurance providers that can be trusted partners that we can rely upon that may not be Canadian insurance providers. This is going to give more consumer choice to the person who's seeking to come to Canada on a super visa. And when you have more choice in a global marketplace, you can actually expect that the cost of that insurance is going to come down. When we have the list of trusted insurance providers, of course, we'll be broadcasting widely to make sure people understand who they are dealing with. We do want to protect against the risk that someone buys insurance from a fly-by-night operation who won't actually cover their needs once they arrive in Canada. So we're working right now to establish a list of trusted partners that's going to provide more consumer choice and potentially bring down the cost for people seeking to come on a super visa. Thank you for the question.
And thank you for that. So we have one follow-up question from the line. Please go ahead.
Hi, was that me, Alec?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Thanks. I wasn't quite sure if it was me. Yeah, just to follow up, I know that you referenced, sorry, this is for Minister Fraser. I know that you referenced the Bill C-19, the targeted draws. I guess my question really is, when do you expect we can start to bear the fruit of those draws, given that currently, or at least even for several months, a lot of experts are stressing I guess, a level of urgency here in tackling that labor shortage across different sectors. So I'd just like to get your thoughts on how these targeted draws, even though Bill C-19 does sort of allow that possibility, I'd like to get your thoughts on how that addresses sort of the urgency there.
Yeah, so the new flexibilities that we have gained in the express entry system through Bill C-19 will allow us to do targeted draws in 2023. So we're not that far off, but there are still several months in the intervening period, and people need workers quickly. So I don't want people to assume that because, although this new flexibility will kick in fairly soon, that means that there's nothing that can be done in the interim. Some of the investments that we've described, including the hiring of 1,250 people that I've shared earlier today, are going to allow us to reduce the times for people to come through programs like the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, like the International Mobility Program, like the Global Skills Strategy. We've continued to prioritize, for example, applications that have come in for healthcare professionals who are coming to participate as workers in the healthcare system. So we're looking at every option that we have available, but to answer your question directly, the new flexibilities will kick in calendar year 2023.
Thank you for that. So we have time for one last question from the floor, from a reporter. Any reporter? Are you a reporter? Okay. So my colleague will pass you the mic.
Thank you, Minister. I'm Ricky Wong from Singapore Daily. So my question is about a temporary public policy called Hong Kong Pathway. So many foreign workers from Hong Kong found themselves stuck here, especially those graduated in 2016 and 2017, because according to the regulation of that public policy, those who graduated within 5 years are eligible to apply for an open work permit. But by the time they apply for their permanent residencies here, they might not be eligible anymore because there might already be 6 or 7 years after they graduated from the college. So would you consider looking into that particular policy and maybe make an amendment of it?
So I'm willing to look into any policy. This is a really unique situation you described because we did launch a specific policy in respect of Hong Kong a number of years ago, and I should be careful because some of the details were established before my time in this particular position. But there's actually an entire cohort of people, not just from Hong Kong, but from different parts of the world who've come to Canada who find themselves in a very similar kind of situation where they've been here for a period of time, but in some instances, due to delays in the immigration processing process in Canada, the time to actually get a status in Canada has exceeded their expectations and jeopardized their opportunity to actually apply for permanent residency. We're looking right now at the different ways we can offer extensions to people who have a temporary status to give them additional time to continue working that will potentially give them the capacity on the timelines to apply for permanent residency. A very similar issue came up recently with postgraduate work permit holders who had not had an opportunity to apply for permanent residency and who were coming up on the didn't benefit from a previous extension that was given and who were coming up or had recently had their work permit expire. What we did was create a new approach to automatically extend those who've had an existing work permit, and we've created a streamlined approach to allow those to reapply for open work permits so they can stay here and on an interim work authorization. So with the cohort that you've described, I'm completely willing to look at options that will allow people who are in Canada and are able to work to continue to stay and to work and potentially apply for permanent residency. What we don't know with certainty yet is whether that's going to require a particular individual policy for those who've come on that temporary policy for Hong Kong, as opposed to a rule of more general application that will allow people who are here temporarily additional time to continue working while they can await the outcome or potentially apply for permanent residency.
Thank you.
So much. Merci, le ministre Fraser. So with that, we'll conclude the Q&A. So la séance de questions-réponses est maintenant terminée. Merci. Thank you.
Merci tout le monde. J'apprécie l'opportunité. Thanks, Wilson. Thank you.